Hello, Lisa.
Hi.
Nice to have you on newsbtc.com, and thanks for pointing us here to speak with you.
Thank you for having me.
Well, so when we start this interview, I would really want you to just treat me as a layman, because seriously, I haven't read anything about EtherParty yet. So you will be the first one to tell me something about it, and I think it will be pretty much same for everything out there who will be watching this video. So my question would be very, very simple. How would you explain EtherParty to me? Was it all about?
Yeah, EtherParty is basically the answer to the growing interest in smart contracts and the gap in ability to learn smart contracts for the average person. So over the past couple of years, as we've seen this term smart contracts kind of emerge, there's been a whole lot of use cases that have come out that have said they could solve, different industry problems. But at the core of it, a lot of people don't know how to actually implement this or actually create this in a way that they can address problems that they're directly working with. So if it's a business person that has a supply chain company and he needs to, solve something in his business and he wants to use a smart contract, he can't actually do it. He has to hire a bunch of developers. They have to actually figure out how to do that, and there's no out of the box solutions that will help him actually solve the problem. So either party is there to really give people the tools to create their own smart contracts.
Well, that's good, but what separates you from other developers at the same time? If there are, I don't know if there are any more solutions to it, but if there are developers making smart contracts, how EtherParty is different from them?
The difference is that, so because we went through this ourselves with hiring developers, getting them to understand what needed to be built in terms of a smart contract, drawing up specifications, going through kind of almost a learning process with each of them on how to develop this and then security test it. And that in itself is a very time-consuming process. And we felt that if most contracts, for example, token contracts and ICO contracts, which are very popular nowadays, they're very much like a template. They're very similar, and they only have maybe some little differences with each one. And so what if we commoditize that process, put it into a very simple wizard-like setup where people fill in their own fields, execute it on command, and this is already a battle-tested, very thoroughly security-vetted, tested contract. And so they have nothing to really worry about in terms of excessive cost, security risks, because we've taken on those risks ourselves. And that's really the main difference of how between hiring your own developers versus using EtherParty.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the security aspect in particular, because Ethereum smart contracts lately have not been, that much famous when it comes to security, especially after the recent hacks we have Parity, which lost around 32 million because of a security loophole. Then before that, there was CoinDash. Again, there was a security loophole in the Solidity smart contract itself. So my question would be that if you are helping these people, these non-techies, with creating the smart contracts, how can you also make sure that the smart contract is secure at the same time? And should there be a hack, if there is a hack, if there is some security loophole, how would you tackle that in real time?
Yeah, so just to be clear, like hacks like that happened with both Parity and earlier than that, the DAO, those were both functions that were in a contract that allowed people to, in the DAO, create a looping mechanism, and in the Parity wallet, access, kind of take over the wallet by calling a certain function. And in consequence, there's a lot to be learned with smart contracts still. There's a lot of function calls, a lot of, I guess, features in Solidity that have yet to be really thoroughly understood. And for that reason, there are still a lot of mistakes. Ethereum itself is still in beta. And for that reason, we're going to still see some security risks. And we have to be very diligent about how we put forward any public smart contracts, which is why any smart contracts that we do, we have to get security tested by a third party. We want to make sure that we stand by our work and make sure that people can trust the smart contracts we put out there.
But it still never guarantees that there will be complete, good security mechanism for, just helping these people out, because non-techies, of course, would not understand it in that manner. So they need some assurance about this thing.
For sure, and we can provide the smart contracts themselves, and we can also show who has independently audited and security tested them. We could have recurring tests on all of these contracts on a weekly basis. But just like any kind of service with like email or even Facebook, you're trusting a company to hold your passwords in a secure manner to keep your information safe. And because our model is very much a hybrid between bringing the decentralized components into a more centralized interaction with users, there is a level of trust that is required, and some things we will have to be very vigilant about how we go about doing. And at the least, what we can do is provide users with their own keys so that they have and only have access to their own accounts. And what we provide them, we have to demonstrate that we've done our due diligence in making sure it's secure.
A crowd sale of yours coming up, in the coming time. So again, my question would be about the very much same thing about your crowd sale ICO, that how people can be benefited by investing in, how those tokens. I really don't know the name of those tokens. You have to let me know. But how are they running this economy, this inside economy you have developed inside the EtherParty platform?
Yeah, so EtherParty really emerged out of kind of seeing this increase in interest in smart contracts and being able to have a very user-friendly option of using them and creating them. And when we were working with, when Bambex, which is the company I started in 2013, had a lot of remote workers, it was really the idea of being able to pay these remote workers through a smart contract, and it like autonomously if they had done work. So if you are developing something and you're pushing it to GitHub, and then your contract says that you have to have a number of line commits and they have to be fully merged into like the master branch, and only at that point will you then be compensated for that work. It's kind of removing trust from the person, the employer, and putting that into more of the blockchain, where the employer has to put up funds into like an escrow type contract, where the smart contract is now the holder of these funds, and each party has to operate according to the rules that they've both agreed to at the outset of the contract. And so that was kind of the vision behind EtherParty. And over time, we've been able to test different ways of making smart contracts easy to use. We have had different types of prototypes. We've grown the team, thankfully, in the last year to now about 15 people, only in Vancouver, and most of them are developers. And we've been able to now partner with Rootstock so that we can have smart contracts on either Bitcoin or Ethereum. And so the thing that powers all of this is really the fuel token, which allows people to access the smart contract library, the monitoring tools, the security tools, and also decide what chain they want to launch on. And this then removes the need for them to manage different currencies. Also, it removes the need to manage different blockchains and different nodes, and use all this through one interface.
So, you mentioned the fuel token. Is it specifically created to function the EtherParty economy, or can we also use it outside its domain?
EtherParty's fuel token is its in-app currency, so it's used purely to power the functions and the features within the application itself.
Okay.
I think your earlier question was like, what's driving the demand for this token? Right. And we see the growth of smart contracts growing every year, and we have to have user-friendly tools to address it. And if we're going to be working with companies that want to use smart contracts in an enterprise level situation to address various business problems, then they will need to purchase fuel. And that's how we're driving the economy of both the application token and the app itself.
So you mentioned app. I mean, with app you mean to have this service available for Android and Apple users. Am I getting it right?
Yes, we'll have a web app, which we have right now,
Okay.
and then we'll have a mobile app for Android and Apple users.
But
And we have
there are
sorry, go
some,
ahead.
yeah, sorry, sorry to cut you off. But there are some things, about these Apple regulations particularly. We have seen that how they have banned certain apps, from functioning because they had a cryptocurrency in it. Dash, for example. I really forgot the name of that app, but they had specifically banned Dash just because they used a token that was not regulated by any government. How do you answer that? And how do you
Yeah,
actually cope with that?
that's that's something that we think about
Hmm.
very often in terms of how
Yeah.
we're going to be structuring this app. And
Hmm.
our experience working with Bambex, our experience with Bambex, having worked with different companies, including companies that have launched a mobile app on the App Store, is that we can't allow people to purchase the cryptocurrency directly through the app.
Hmm.
They'll be able to construct contracts, they'll be able to check contracts and the status of it,
All right.
interact with people that they're sending contracts with. But in terms of being able to purchase cryptocurrencies, that will be the restriction.
Well, that is a very smart plan, by the way. I went to bypass Apple, of course. That's a really smart thing, I would say.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
yeah, we can't bypass Apple unless we buy everything through the Apple Store, right?
Yeah,
So
of course. And of course, I've heard about so many blockchain companies trying to bypass Apple just by creating a separate marketplace for people like you and me, in which cryptocurrencies can be a very safe word to say. So I will move to the next question. Of course, I'm sorry I dwelled in.
no worries.
Yeah. So my next question would be about the regulations. It's very fresh. It's like the very freshest wound to cryptocurrency world what China has done. And I'm pretty sure that it must impact company like yours as well because Chinese investors were really beginning to, invest in these ICO businesses. Most of the traffic was coming from there, from that territory. How do you think it will impact the ICO world as a whole?
So it was something that seemed to be looming for a bit. We saw different press articles going out about how, ICOs should be regulated, how, their ICOs are illegal and whatnot. And then over the weekend, like I think 3 or 4 days ago, the People's Bank of China came out with a kind of statement saying that ICO activity is illegal, ICO platforms are illegal. And as soon as that happened, we saw a bunch of ICO platforms shut down. And we actually worked with some of those on our Bambex marketing side. So in the interest of our clients and our partners on the Bambex marketing side, we had to make sure that no one was doing anything illegal according to that statement, and we pulled out of China entirely. And the same goes for any type of marketing that we'll do, even for EtherParty. I know I keep going into Bambex and we're talking about EtherParty as well, but it's hard because we saw the kind of problems that we could address while we were working with Bambex that now we can address by building what we did with EtherParty. And so, yeah, the Chinese regulation was not surprising, but it's also in line with kind of how it was kind of getting out of hand in China. Things were kind of like even more Wild West than the rest of the world almost. We're seeing crazy raises, very little product, very little credibility in the teams. People were treating it like almost like gambling. And considering China's currency controls, their centralized view on banking and economy, it's not surprising. But that just means that we have to renew our focus in the markets outside of China.
Indeed. So, do you expect them to come back to senses when it comes to supporting genuine ICOs at least?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's a tough question.
I don't think so.
Well, me too. I mean, I was particularly shocked about that statement. I must really admit that. And to ban something, like from the ground, it's really a very hard stand. And so I was particularly shocked about it. And coming from you as well, I think we are pretty much on the same page that they're not going to look into ICOs for a very long time until companies such as yours start proving to them that they are actually meant for good, not for anything bad.
Yeah, and that's what we're doing here in Canada, and what we are encouraging others to do as well is to talk to the regulators. Jurisdictions like Gibraltar are very open in terms of the regulators talking to the projects. And that's very similar to here in Canada. We've seen another ICO get regulatory approval, and we're also in discussions with them locally, and that's something that I think needs to happen to demonstrate that we're not just wild gunmen in the Wild West looking to make a quick dollar and to deceive people. We're very much about having openness and talking about what we're trying to do, talking about the technology. These are not just things that are a quick scheme. It's very much about we stand behind the technology, and we want to make sure that we're compliant. And we want to understand how we can do that.
So it was nice chatting to you, Lisa, and I'm sure that the EtherParty project will really go to the stratospherical levels, and it will really amaze people in the future. Thank you very much for speaking to us.
Thank you.